Good morning, students. I am Dr. Nitin Kumar Agarwal, Associate Professor, Timid College, Muradabad itself. I extend my heartiest welcome to you all to today's session based on financial accounting. Today's session would be covering the topic that is based on the journal entry. So, as you know that journal entry is very important, or journalizing the transaction, business transactions is very important when you are writing the books of accounting. So, the very first question of the student is that what is the journal entry and what is the role of journal entry. So for the small revision, I would like to express my views on the journal entry or journalizing the business transactions. So whenever the transactions are taking place in any business organization, you have to record in the primary books, that is known as the journal. So journal entry, you can say it is the language of accounting, and you need to write any transaction in the book systematically under the double entry system. So journal entry is recording the business transaction in the books of accounting. And the second question in the mind of students is that what is the classification of accounts and what is the need of studying the classification of accounts. So it is very important because the journal entries would be prepared on the basis of some rules, and rules would be classified under the three accounts. So what is the particular significance of these accounts, I would be expressing further. And the next question is that there are some rules. Yes, there are some rules of the journal entries, as I told you, that first of all you have to identify the business transaction and you have to classify the account, and there are some rules under these accounts. So if you are aware, you are familiar of the rules of accounting, rules of journal entries, you would be preparing your journal entries very easily, smoothly. So the last in the last you would be knowing about generalizing the business transaction in the journal. So there would be a particular format, there would be a particular system, and as per the rules of accounting, rules of journal entries, you can say the golden rules of journal entries, you would be making the journal entries in the books of accounting. So the very first question, that exactly what is the classification of accounts, as the accounts are classified into three categories. The first is personal account, second is real accounts, and last but not least, it is the nominal account. So, personal account refers to those accounts which are related to debtors, creditors, any individual, firm, or companies. And real accounts are based on the assets and properties. You can say that the tangible assets you can touch, you can see, are involved or included in the real accounts. And nominal accounts refers to the expenses, incomes, gains, and losses. So there are some rules under these three accounts, and on the basis of these rules you would be preparing the journal entries, right? Now there is a particular there are some components of journal entry. So what a particular entry consists of these components. So first is date, the date on which the transaction occurred, and debit and credit, both the side, because you know that under the double entry system each and every transaction is influenced by two sides, that is debit and credit. So you have to mention in the journal entry the debit and credit, your two accounts. And amount, because every transaction is having the monetary value, and you need to record the monetary value of the transaction in the books. So there is a particular role of amount in the journal entry. And narration, as you can say, it is the brief description of the transaction. It means in order to clear any doubt of the user of accounting, the narration is provided in the journal entry. So, for example, of journal entry for loan taken from a bank, suppose you are raising the loan from any bank. So, bank balance is increased over there, and loan is a liability. So, there would be a particular transaction of raising the loan from bank. So, how to make this entry? No doubt, when you are knowing the rules of generalizing the business transactions, you can easily make this entry. So there would be this the entry of this particular transaction would be that bank account debit to bank loan account, right? Now I would like to approach the MS Excel so that you know how to practically record the business transactions in the form of journal entries, right? So the very first thing is the format. So as you know that date, particulars, and you should write that this is the particulars, and ledger folio, basically the page number of ledger you have to mention in the journal, and two columns you can see, that is the amount debit and amount credit, because I told you that two accounts would be influenced, two accounts would be impacted by any business transaction, so you have to mention the amount in the debit side as well as in the credit side. So the very first transaction, as you can see, is started business with cash. So as you see that there are three accounts, as I told you. You have to identify that transaction is that you are going to start the business with cash. It means you are bringing the cash, the capital in the form of cash in your business organization. So exactly what would be the transaction entry of this transaction, that what comes in, because the cash is involved in this particular entry. So there is a role of the real account, because cash, so cash account would be debited, because what comes in is the rule of the real account. So cash account debit, we have to write down here cash account debit, right? And as you are starting or commencing your business, so you are investing the capital in the business, and capital is as a liability. So cash is yes, coming in your business organization in the form of capital, or you can say you are investing the capital, so capital would be credited, right, in this particular entry to capital account. And you have to mention the narration: capital brought in business, or business is started, right? And the amount is rupees 50,000, and you have to mention the date of this transaction, that is July 1st, right? And the second transaction is on July 2nd, and that is purchased office furniture. Again, there is a case of furniture or the real asset. So you are receiving, you are bringing the furniture in your business, so furniture would be debit, right? So furniture account debit. And as the cash balance is decreased, or you can say that cash is going out, so what goes out is to be credited. So here you have to write that to cash account, right? And you can mention the office furniture, because it is mentioned in the question that office furniture, so you can write furniture or office furniture, right? And what would be the narration is that office furniture purchased. And what is the amount? Rupees 5,000. And third transaction on July 3rd is bought merchandise for cash. It means you are buying the material what is to be sold by you, or you can say the stock, or whatever you are doing the business. So exactly what is your purchase, you have to mention the purchase account, right? You are purchasing the merchandise, so purchase account would be debit here. And because you are buying the particular products, or your purchase, right? So you have to give the cash, cash goes out, so you have to mention to cash account, right? And what would be the narration? That bought merchandise. And what is the amount? 10,000, right? And next transaction on July 4 is purchase merchandise on credit. So you have to observe, you have to be very vigilant when you are recording any transaction, that that particular transaction may be related to the credit, or maybe in the cash. So here you see that purchased merchandise on credit. It is clearly mentioned in the question that merchandise was purchased on credit from Messrs. ABC Traders. So the party name is given here. There is no involvement of cash. This is the pure credit transaction. So cash would not be mentioned in the general entry, but you, as you are buying the merchandise, so merchandise again account would be debit, and two, you have not to mention the cash because this is the credit transaction, and you have to write down the Messrs. ABC Traders, right? You have to mention the party's name because it is the name of your creditor, because you are buying the merchandise from ABC Traders. And for rupees 15,000 you have to mention in the both side this particular amount of the transaction, and narration would be merchandise bought on credit. And 5th July, right? Whatever the date is mentioned in your question, or the business transaction took the place, you have to mention this particular date, because systematically you are recording the business transactions in this journal. And whenever there is a requirement of retrieving any information from the books of accounting, definitely it would be very easy and handful that you take or you gather the information from the books, right? And it is very necessary that you are clearly mentioning everything what is required as per the format, because whenever you would be posting into the ledger these transactions, there would be a need of these dates as well as the amounts, right? So everything is very important. Okay, so on 5th July, there is a particular transaction that sold goods for cash. This is the cash transaction. It means you are selling the goods for cash rupees 8,000. So cash comes in, and as per the rules of accounting of real account, what comes in is debited. So cash account would be debit, and because there is a income through sales, so to sales account, right? And the narration would be goods sold for cash. And 5th July is rupees 8,000, so you have to mention the amount 8,000, right? And now on July 6th, so July 6th you have to mention this entry, sold goods on credit. So this is the credit transaction, as you are selling the goods to Messrs XYZ Limited for rupees 12,000. So XYZ Limited is the receiver. As I told you, that receiver would be debit as per the rules of the personal account, because the party's name is given to you in this transaction. So Messrs XYZ Limited debit, and as you are selling the goods, what goes out, the particular rule is applied towards this transaction. So to sales account, right? Rupees 12,000. Okay, and what is the narration? Goods sold on credit, right? And on July 7th, so there is a transaction on July 7th, right? And what is the transaction? Paid rent for the office. So office rent as being the expenses, office rent, and all expenses are debit in the journal entry. So office rent debit, right? And because whenever any expenses takes place, you have to make the payment, right? So the transaction is paid rent for office rupees 2,000. In this case, you have to pay cash to cash account, right? And the particular amount is paid rent for office rupees 2000. So you have to mention rupees 2000 in the debit side and 2000 in the credit side. And what is the narration? No doubt, office rent paid. As a brief description of this transaction, you have to mention in the form of narration. And 8th July, right? July 8. You see that a particular transaction paid salaries to staff. So if the staff is mentioned in this transaction, but if the expenses is given to you, so you have to record the salary account, not the staff account, because if the particular expenses in a name is given to you, so you have to mention that particular expenses in its name. So salary account would be debit, and because you are paying the salaries to your staff, you have to make the payment in the form of cash. So again, to cash account. And what is the particular amount of this transaction? It is 6000. So you have to mention again this 6000 in the both side. And the narration is that salary to staff paid. And 9th July, received commission. This is the case of the income, and incomes are always credited in the journal entry as per the rule, but in the form of the commission. Sometimes students get confused that commission is being received, so the commission is coming, right? And what comes in is debit. But as you see that there is no any commission, or right, there is a particular cash in the form of commission, so you are receiving the commission and in the form of cash. So cash is the particular item which comes in, right? So what comes in? The cash. So cash account would be debit here, not the commission. So cash account debit. And because this is the case of the income, so all the incomes are credit in the entry. So to commission account as the income, all incomes are credit, right? And what is the particular amount? 9th July, received commission rupees 1500. So 1500 in the debit side and 1500 in the credit side. And the narration would be commission, right? And 10th July, there is a particular transaction that paid electricity bill. Again, this is the case of the expenses. Electricity bill is paid rupees 800. So electricity expenses account debit to cash account. And narration would be electricity expenses paid. And what is the particular amount of this transaction? You can see rupees 800, right? So you have to mention rupees 800 in the debit side and again the credit side. And the next transaction is withdrawn cash for personal use. When there is a matter of personal use, it means there is a case of the drawings. So on 11th July, right, there is a case of the drawings. So when you are withdrawing the cash from the business for the personal use, you have to mention drawing account debit. And because the cash goes out, right, so you have to mention to cash account. And the narration would be uh, cash withdrawn for personal use, right? And what the particular amount of this transaction is, that rupees 2000, right? So you have to mention rupees 2000. Okay, and now on 12th July, so what is the transaction? Received cash from Messrs XYZ Limited, as maybe you have sold the goods and now you are receiving the cash from the party rupees 6000. So you have to mention the entry that cash account debit, right, to Messrs XYZ Limited, and I think the amount is given to you rupees 6000, right, rupees 6000, and you can see, you can check on 12th July 6000 Messrs XYZ Limited. And on 13th July, the transaction is paid cash to Messrs ABC Traders, because maybe you have bought the goods or you have taken the particular credit, so you have to pay the cash. Now this is the transaction that you are paying the cash to Messrs ABC Traders rupees 5000. So the entry would be okay, the narration was left of previous transaction, that you receive the cash. So first we complete it. uh, Cash received from Messrs XYZ Limited, right? And on July 13, the transaction is, right, we check it that the transaction on 13 July is paid cash to Messrs ABC Traders, Messrs A ABC Traders, right, will be debit, and as you are paying the cash, so to cash account, right, and the narration would be cash given to party, right. And what is the particular amount on 13th July paid cash to Messrs ABC Traders rupees 5000. So you have to mention rupees 5000. Okay, and on July 14, right, there is a particular transaction on 14 July. Purchase machinery for cash rupees 20,000. So machinery comes in, machinery account debit to cash account, right? And what is the amount of this transaction? 20,000. So you have to mention rupees 20,000. And what is the narration? Machinery bought, right? And on 15th July, what is the particular transaction? Paid for office supplies. So there is again the expenses of office supplies. So office supplies would be debit in this transaction, and because the cash goes out, so to cash account, and narration may be that payment made for, this is the brief description for this transaction, for office supplies, right. And you can go on the particular transaction. Yes, paid for office supplies rupees 1000. So you have to mention here rupees 1000, right. On 16th July, again there is a particular transaction. So what is that? On 16th July, received interest on bank deposit, right? So you are receiving the interest. This is the case of income and rupees 500 on bank deposit. So you are receiving the interest. So cash account debit, right? Generally, the bank, if you are receiving the interest from bank, so bank balance would be increased. So you should mention bank account debit, right? And from bank, so the giver is to bank to uh, sorry, that is the income. So to you have to mention the bank interest, right? Account, and addition would be that interest on bank deposit received, right? And what is the amount of this transaction? As you can see, rupees 500. So you have to mention on 16th July rupees 500. So on the 17th July, right? You have to mention here 17th July. And what is the transaction that issued a check for insurance premium? So you have to notice that in this particular transaction, the cash is not given for the insurance premium as you are making the payment to insurance company, but you are giving a check. So the particular transaction would be here in the form of check. So you have to record this transaction in the form of journal entries by mentioning the bank account in the credit side. And because the insurance premium is the expenses and all expenses are debit as per the rules of journal entries, right, as per the nominal account. So insurance premium account debit, and as you are issuing the check, so in the form of bank, you have to mention the bank uh, to bank account, right? And what is the particular narration that insurance premium paid through bank, through check, right? And you can just draw, okay, right? So what is the particular amount of this transaction? Because issued a check for insurance premium rupees 1200, you have to mention this amount, right? And 18th July, so what is the transaction? Received cash for service rendered? Because sometimes you see that there is a case of rendering the services to some clients, so there is a particular income. So you have to receive the cash for service rendered, and you are receiving the cash, and cash comes in. So as per the rules, you have to make it this account cash account debit, and because there is a case of the services rendered, so income in the form of service, so this is the income, and all incomes are credited in the general entry. So to income from, or service income, you can say income from service account, right? And received income from services rendered, right? And what is the particular amount? Rupees 3000. Okay. And on 19th July, again there is a case that paid advertisement expenses. So advertisement expenses would be debit, and because there is a case of cash involvements, you are paying the cash to cash account. If there would be the case of check, you are issuing the check, so that time instead you have to write the bank account, not the cash account, right? So to cash account, because the cash goes out, right, advertisement expenses paid. So what would be the narration? Advertisement expenses paid. And what about the amount? Amount is 1500, right? So 1500 is the amount in the debit side and again in the credit side, right? And 20th July, uh, there is a particular transaction that took a loan from the bank. You are raising the loan from the financial institution, rupees 25,000. So bank balance is increased because I told you that when you are raising the loan from bank, the bank will transfer the money to or credit the money to your account. So in this case, you have to mention the bank account debit, not the cash account, and the in the credit side, because the bank loan is the liability, so to bank loan account, right? And this is the transaction for rupees 25,000. So this is the particular amount, rupees 25,000. Okay, and the narration would be bank loan raised. And on 21st July, there is a transaction that paid loan interest as interest on bank loan you are making the payment for rupees 1000. So interest on loan account debit, because this is the expenses, and uh, wait, you are reducing the cash balance, so to cash account, and narration would be interest on loan paid. And what is the particular amount? Paid loan interest rupees 1000, so you have to mention rupees 1000. And now 22nd July, there is a transaction that purchase a computer on credit. Again, there is a case of credit transaction, but a particular asset is involved in this transaction, that is the computer. So computer comes in, so computer account would be debit. And because on credit you are buying the computer, right? So there would be the supplier account, not the cash account or the bank account. So to supplier account, who is the supplier of computer, right? And you have to mention the amount, rupees 10,000, right? 10,000. And the narration would be that computer bought for business or in business, right? And 23rd July, there is a particular transaction that received cash from debtors. So cash comes in, cash account would be debit in this transaction, and from debtors, because the party is debtor who is the giver, and giver would be credit. So to debtor account, and the amount is 7,000. So you have to mention in the both sides 7,000, right? And what is the narration? That cash received from debtors, right? And 24th July, what is the transaction? 24th July, paid cash to creditors because there are some creditors. So creditor, right? Because you are making the payment to creditors, so creditors account debit, and because you are making the payment, cash goes out, so you have to mention to cash account, and the narration is cash given to creditors or the payment made to creditors. And what is the amount paid cash to creditors? Rupees 4,000, right? 4,000. So it is important for the students to be familiar with the rules of journal entries. Otherwise, it is not easy to make the journal entries without the rules keeping in the mind, right? Because everything is in a systematic way as per the double entry system, right? And There is a particular need to learn this particular topic, because on the basis of the journal entries, once you are ready with your journal, you would be able to post these transactions into the ledger. So ledger posting, in the next lecture you will learn about it, that how to post the particular transactions from journals to ledger. And as you know that the every next book would base on the previous book, so journal entries are very important. And definitely the stakeholders or the user of accounting would take the information, and if they need to take any informed decision, that time they need the information from the books. And if you are maintaining systematically every record, every business transaction in the books in a particular form or format, so it would be easy to retrieve or to call the information that time, right? So again, this is the suggestion, that you are maintaining very carefully whatever the transactions are taking place in your business organization, right? So 24th July transaction already we have completed, and we come to 25th of July. So there is a case that July 25th, and exactly what is the transaction: paid telephone bill. So again, this is the case of the expenses, telephone expenses, right? Set telephone expenses account debit, and you are making the payment. So cash goes out to cash account, and rupees 600. And narration would be telephone expenses paid, right? And now 26th of July, there is a particular transaction, that received rent from subletting office space. Sometimes if you are having the extra space in your office, and you arrange a particular tenant that who is ready to take that particular space and pay you the rent, so this is the particular income to the organization. So this is the subletting office income. So you are receiving the cash account debit in the form of rent. So you can mention only to rent account, right? To rent account or sublet income you can mention, right? So what is the particular amount? Rupees 2,500, rupees 2,500, and the narration is subletting income received or rent received, right? And 27th of July, there is a transaction, that is paid property tax. Again, there is a particular payment. So property tax account debit, and to cash account, and narration would be that property tax paid. Okay, and what is the particular amount? Rupees 1,200. Okay, and 28th July, sold old equipment for cash, rupees 4,000. So you are receiving the cash account debit to old office equipment, because office equipment go outside. So what goes out is to be credit, right? And narration would be office equipments sold, right? And what is the amount? Rupees 4,000. So this is the transaction on 28th July, and 29th July again there would be a transaction, that is purchase raw material for production. So you are buying the raw material, so raw material comes in raw material account is debit, and you are making the payment to your supplier in the form of cash to cash account. There is a cash transaction, otherwise there would be a name of the party or the supplier, right? So raw material purchased by giving the cash to the party, so that is rupees 8,000. Right, sometimes few terms are given to you in the question, and maybe you might be confused over there that the production what is there. So raw material would be used in the production, right? So there is no matter that what the particular term is given to you. You have to identify exactly what is the transaction. Right now you are not going to produce the article exactly, you are buying the raw material for production. So you have to write down, you have to mention in general entries the raw material, because what comes in exactly the term raw material, right? Raw material comes in your business organization, so you have to make it debit. So raw material is debit in this particular transaction in the general entry, and because you are buying the raw material, so you have to pay the amount in the form of cash, so cash goes out. So as per the rules, we are making the cash account as credit, and exactly what is the amount you have to see in your question. So purchase raw material for production rupees 8,000. So you have to mention rupees 8,000, right? And the last transaction of this question is on 30th July. And what is the transaction? Paid cash for transportation charges. So again, this is the case of the expenses. The different expenses, you should remember that there may be the different expenses. So you have to open the account. So you must be familiar with the terms. You must be familiar with the different expenses names, right? So transportation, again, there is a case of the expenses. Transportation expenses account would be debit, right? And because the cash is given to make the payment, so to cash account, right? And narration would be that transportation expenses paid. And what is the amount? The amount is rupees 500. Okay, so such in the way the particular question is completed, and you have seen that how to generalize the business transaction on the basis of the rules which comes or are covered under the three accounts, that is personal account, real account, and nominal account. So it is very important for every students to know about the general entries rules, right? Because if you are keeping the rules in your mind, you can easily smoothly make the entries, right? And you can generalize all the transactions. So right now, as we discuss these transactions, and maybe you face the practically, if you are running any business organization, that the different transaction will take place. So first of all, this is your duty, or this is the duty of the accountant which is maintaining the books of accounting, that what is the transaction which is taking place in the business, because you have to open the particular head, or you have to give a name to that expenses. So in this question, that the different expenses were covered, so that the students are familiar with the different kinds of the expenses or the incomes, and how to mention in the journal entries, how to record in the books of accounting. And further in the next lecture, definitely with the new transactions or some typical transactions, I would be covering your journal entry portion, so that you learn about the journal entries more and more. And I think now the students are familiar with the journal entries. So this is the takeaway for today. Thank you very much.